SCP-131 considered for permanent roles as wardens for SCPs like
It's been a year now. So yeah, basically, you know, it's been a year.
73 and 689, and in our opinion, they're more than qualified. Now check out SCP-999, the Tickle Monster, and SCP-5031, yet another murder.
I missed this. What? Eventually, I have to follow my dad. I'm the son of the Scarlet King for a reason.
Have you ever seen something you weren't supposed to? Something that made you feel off? Something you regret? Secrets like these are best kept to yourself. But since you're still alive, whatever you saw wasn't nearly as bad as what Peter Holland saw one fateful night in January of 2015. Peter was an unremarkable man, an office worker, slaving away at the daily grind. And like a lot of people, Peter enjoyed nothing more than coming home after a long, hard day, kicking back and watching some TV. It was this innocent activity that led to Peter's horrifying brush with SCP-5049, altering the course of his otherwise average life forever. The event started at around 10:05 p.m. Peter was channel surfing, glued to the couch in his sparsely furnished apartment. Commercials, 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 as far as Peter's tired eyes could see. He paused for a moment to watch the end of an ad for a car he could never hope to afford on his salary. But something stopped him from changing the channel again. The next ad had begun, and it was playing a strange, scratchy jingle that gave Peter an odd sense of unease. But even stranger than that was the text on screen. Demon Dan's Discount Homunculus Depot, in baby blue bubble lettering. He forced a smile. This had to be some weird comedy skit or viral marketing campaign, or maybe it was something he drank. But no, this was a real commercial, and things were about to get even weirder. The peppy logo faded to a concerning sight. A tall humanoid figure dressed like a used car salesman, but one that definitely wasn't human. His skin was dark green and covered in patches of thick fur. He had long fingers with intimidating claws and a grin full of needle-like fangs. It looked almost demonic, and after a few seconds the demon began to speak. Hey there, folks, it's your man, Demon Dan, coming at you with the latest and greatest deals from Demon Dan's Discount Homunculus Depot. We've just accepted a shipment of brand new models that would make even the most discerning customers weep with excitement. Let's see what we've got. The creature, apparently named Demon Dan, stepped away from his desk, revealing two long, furry goat legs that ended in large, pointed hooves. Peter now assumed he really was going crazy, but at this point he was along for the ride. Demon Dan continued his pitch. Looking to make your way through the capitalist hellscape that makes home look cozy? Come try one of our newest businessman models. Dan gestured behind him to where Peter was horrified to see a total of 52 adult male human bodies hanging from the wall. There was something uncanny about them. They seemed almost hollow, like a highly realistic costume or a prop from a horror movie. Peter didn't have much time to think about it, though, as Demon Dan went on. If you're looking for an extra challenge of inequality, the businesswoman model may be a right fit for you. The commercial then revealed a wall of human female bodies strung up in a similar fashion. Now, you may be thinking, but Dan, business sounds hard. I just want to have some fun. And the fine team here at Demon Dan's Discount Homunculus Depot have got you covered. The camera zoomed out to show an area of the store filled with children's decorations, and more of these strange, hollowed-out human suits in child sizes to match. And who has more fun than kids? No one, that's who. For a limited time, the purchase of any child-size unit comes with a complimentary 50% off coupon for parental units. You just can't say no to a deal like that. Before Peter could process the madness that was unfolding before him, the camera cut again. The store's logo appeared on the screen once more, along with several cuts to locations around the store itself. There were more human bodies, hundreds of them. Demon Dan's sleazy voice rang out over all of it. Here at Demon Dan's Discount Homunculus Depot, we know it's not all fun and games. The bravest among us have a mission to accomplish. The Seven Lords are ever planning their invasion after all, so you're looking for function over form. Well, we've got that in spades down here in the Tactical Services Department. You'll be kicking ass in no time when you're wearing the latest models at the best prices. Seven Lords. Invasion. What did any of this mean? Suddenly the camera was showing him a new room. Red curtains parted, revealing more of these person suits, several bearing a striking resemblance to real human celebrities. He managed to make out Gucci Mane, Avril Lavigne, Paul McCartney, and Britney Spears before Demon Dan's appearance once again drew his attention. I've got a special treat for you. We're happy to announce the VIP Lookalike Department. We all know how difficult the creation of homunculus is. It's a fine art that takes years of practice. So when a replacement order on VIPs comes in, every detail needs to be perfect. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. But for the right price, you too can look like famous icons from around the globe. The image of celebrity bodies faded from view, and Peter was left looking at the grinning Demon Dan standing behind the front desk of his impossible store once more. He said, "There you have it, folks. Come on down to Demon Dan's Discount Homunculus Depot. If you're viewing the advertisement, then you've been selected for entry. Please enter the nearest door for instant deals and upgrade those old duds for one of our newest models. What are you waiting for? Come on down." The logo popped up again, hovering above some bold text that said, "Please enter the nearest door." Peter had had enough. He switched off the TV. What a horror show, he thought. They should just warn you before they put short horror films on TV like that. He had no idea they could just slip them in among regular commercials. Surely Demon Dan and his store couldn't be real, right? But as his eyes drifted to the door in his room, he didn't feel quite so certain. Well, there was only one way to find out. Peter got up, went over to the door, took a deep breath, and walked through it. Peter Holland was never seen again. Not as himself, anyway. The SCP Foundation has long been aware of this sinister transmission, known as SCP-5049-2, and luckily has found ways to prevent it from claiming more victims. The Foundation Television Analysis Department, as well as webcrawler 40Y40, which is the software the Foundation uses to root out anomalous activity online, are always vigilant for signs of Demon Dan's commercial running. Just observing Demon Dan, who is himself classified as SCP-5049-A, and his ads put you in immediate danger, as they can transform any nearby doors into SCP-5049-1s. Those are interdimensional portals that remain active for around 15 minutes after viewing the ad. So then what specifically is SCP-5049? It's the entire pocket dimension known as Demon Dan's Discount Homunculus Depot, a Kettier-class spatial anomaly constantly on the lookout for new human victims, which it transforms into fleshy suits for its demonic clients, which let them blend in around humans. Prior to its discovery by the Foundation, it's likely that Demon Dan and his associates claimed hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. But sadly, even discovering this anomaly came at a gruesome cost to the Foundation. On February 16, 2020, the ad played on Safe Storage Warehouse 13's break room television. At the time of the broadcast, 4 Foundation personnel were present, including security agent William Birkin. Worrying that this was a potential security threat, Agent Birkin investigated the door to a nearby closet. The second he opened it, he was transformed to the storefront of Demon Dan's Discount Homunculus Depot. He saw Demon Dan himself standing at the corner, while 4 smaller reptilian imps fought over a small flesh suit. Demon Dan scolded them, before turning his attention to Agent Birkin. Tis, you aren't supposed to be here, little man. How naughty. I'm gonna have a word with marketing. Once I'm through with you. Agent Birkin, fearing for his safety, drew his weapon and shot Demon Dan 3 times. The creature dematerialized, before appearing right next to Agent Birkin, and disarming him with a swift chop. The unfortunate security agent was then grabbed by the considerably larger Demon Dan and thrown over Dan's shoulder. We know all of this, because Agent Birkin's standard-issue Foundation body camera recorded the whole terrifying ordeal. Even as Demon Dan dragged the helpless Birkin back into the twisted workshop behind the store. There, Birkin saw what would soon be his own fate right before his eyes. Dan's minions converting human bodies into fleshy suits for their demon clientele. And this unfortunate security officer was next. Dan gave him over to a pair of large sheep-like demons, and told them to drain, skin, and declaw him. Birkin's video feed finally cut as the demons pulled out their rusty tools and began to work on him. Of course, the SCP Foundation wouldn't take an attack on one of their operatives, inside one of their facilities, no less, lying down. The unfortunate death of William Birkin allowed the Foundation to refine their methods of intercepting the broadcast of Demon Dan's commercials. They even had a new mobile task force, Mobile Strike Force Kappa 11, or the Baphomet Bashers, specifically to deal with Demon Dan and his cronies. They did more than just prevent him from taking new humans, though. When the Baphomet Bashers teamed up with an A-class clairvoyant entity to improve their efficiency in predicting future broadcasts, they were able to launch sting operations and arrest 21 different demonic customers for interrogation. This impressive strike back finally gave the Foundation some meaningful leverage over Demon Dan. And through the use of their clairvoyant entity, they were able to call a temporary truce and arrange a meeting with Demon Dan himself.
Whether you lived, run, push, strike, leap, attack, or defend, we are all united by sport. Trusted sports nutrition for all players and all sports. Musashi.
Captain Steiner, an agent of the Foundation External Negotiation Department, was the one to interrogate Demon Dan. They sat across from each other at a table, and Demon Dan was clearly tense, frustrated with the way the Foundation had been messing with his business. All of their sting operations were frightening off his customers. In return for letting him continue his work, the Foundation wanted Dan to turn over all the information on his bosses and customers, allowing the Foundation to track their movements. When Dan was evasive about whether he'd comply, they tried threatening him. Dan laughed them off. Go ahead, take your best shot, little man. There's a dozen more just like me. You won't stop anything. Finally, he was pressured into giving a yes or no answer as to whether he'd willingly collaborate with the Foundation and act as an informant against his kind. When Demon Dan hinted that he may be willing to comply, he began to make a horrifying gurgling noise and gripped his head in pain. He began speaking in Latin in a voice that wasn't his own, as though the 7 demon lords he served were speaking through him. They said, "You are a fool, jailer, to think a pathetic morsel such as this could aid you against us. I have allowed you to toil in your own delusions for far too long. You may have taken advantage of Asmodeus all those years ago, but you stop nothing. You hinder nothing. You jail and barter to no avail. Your time is coming." And then Demon Dan's head exploded, which obviously prevented him from giving any incriminating information on those he worked for. Whoever the Demon Lords are, they're certainly the secretive one. You may think that this is the end of Demon Dan's distant homunculus depot, and of SCP-5049, but soon another ad ran. It advertised the same products and services out of the same store. The only difference was that this time, a different entity was starring in it. Now go check out SCP-2662 Cthulhu.
At higher up, good disability support means something different to everyone.
It's knowing my son has been someone reliable.
Find the right disability support workers.
Over 50 men and women, clad in red robes, kneel before an unholy altar. They chant and mutter indecipherable words, words of cruelty and madness, of obsession and sacrilege. Not long ago, these were regular people. Computer technicians, teachers, plumbers, construction workers, accountants. This was before they fell under the ungodly influence of a new ruler. The center of this makeshift place of worship was once a normal school gymnasium, but it's now the home of a huge statue. A humanoid being, wreathed in tentacles. Its head is more like a squid or cuttlefish than anything resembling an actual human face. While he's known to the cultists as the tentacled god, the beast they worship is known to the SCP Foundation as SCP-2662, and he sits in the belly of one of their expansive containment facilities, locked away from the world. But not for long. If his devoted followers have anything, to say about it. This is their God, all-powerful and unchanging, and when it comes to springing him from containment, no tactic is too vile or underhanded to get the job done. Their mortal leader and high priest, a man in a purple robe calling himself Brother Marsh, walks among their crouched forms. He whispers instructions for the great day of liberation that's soon to come, providing everyone plays their part. It's a plan months in the making, and one that, if it goes off without a hitch, could free their monstrous god into the world. They would strike at the very heart of their enemy, the SCP Foundation, when they least expect it, and nothing shall stand in their way. How could they lose when they have a god on their side? But why did all these normal people become violent zealots for a squid-faced deity? It all began with a dream. To those who experienced these dreams, they felt more like prophecies, premonitions of the glorious horrors to come. A red sky, billions dead, and billions more enslaved, a dark silhouette on the horizon. Their tentacled god holding dominion over all. At first, it just seemed like a strange nightmare. The ones who experienced it woke up shaken and afraid, hoping to shake the images from their mind, but they couldn't. Every night, the nightmare would return. They'd see the images, the red sky, the dead and enslaved, the tentacled god. And after a while, it would come to them even when they weren't asleep, eventually happening whenever they closed their eyes. Little by little, this scene stopped looking so hideous and started to look glorious. They felt his presence in their minds, slowly pushing them towards their inevitable future. They started to realize that they wanted him to rule over the universe and to experience the honor of serving him. Many of them abandoned their homes and families, leaving their friends and loved ones left to worry that they'd gone insane. In their eyes, they were safer than they'd ever been. They finally had purpose. They were working in service of something far greater than themselves. The influence of the tentacled god drew them closer to one another. They would meet in secret, exchanging information from the prophecies their ruler sent to them in their dreams. They worshiped together, building altars and idols to congregate around. They performed dark blood rituals involving human and animal sacrifice. It was when Brother Marsh, the Anointed One, arrived to guide them towards their true mission that things kicked into high gear. Just 3 months prior, Brother Marsh had been an office drone working in data entry for a large insurance company before the tentacled god invaded his thoughts with a simple message: free me, and the new world I create shall be your playground. Since then, he devoted himself completely to the cause, quitting his job and maxing out his credit cards to help fund his new life's purpose, infiltrating the SCP Foundation and releasing.
Hey Koi, what's up? Can you go get me a burger please? I'm hungry. Sure. Okay, cool. Let's sit down here I guess, smoke some weed. And yeah.
His inhuman ruler from its imprisonment. That was the single goal he united the cultists under: freedom for the tentacled god. And at long last, they had all the pieces in place to strike. They'd finally gathered the necessary intel to subvert the will of the most powerful secret organization on Earth. Even the strongest institution is made of people, and people are weak. Unlike the almighty tentacled god, people could be broken.
So the Combank app does all your budgety stuff now, hey kiddo?
Yeah, I found it quite advantageous.
Advantage us?
Track, budget, predict, and get the app Vantage available with an everyday account.
The people in question were Kelly Thompson, Sidney Levitt, Jordan Broche, Dr. Juan Gutierrez, and this site is for SCP personnel with O5 approval.
Thanks, Corey.
Access beyond
You're
this
welcome.
point for those with standard level 4
See ya.
security is
See ya,
prohibited
Corey.
and may result in termination of Foundation employment. Unauthorized visitors who survive the mimetic kill agent are detained and interrogated under truth-exacting mimetic agents. Dr. Herman Wright was used to high security protocols. He had been working with the SCP Foundation for several years, and had
Which
dealt
he
with
did, I guess.
specimen 4001. You must be Dr. Wright. He didn't give Dr. Wright a chance to respond. Dr. Henricks didn't seem like the kind of man to be very interested in what others had to say. Yes, yes. About time the Foundation sent me a new research assistant. I suppose you have a lot of questions? Dr. Wright was supposed to be a researcher, not an assistant. He didn't suppose it would do any good to point that out. When Dr. Wright tried to question what it was that he'd be researching, Dr. Henricks told him that it would be easier to show than explain. With that, he motioned Dr. Wright to a nearby table, where one of the countless identical books on the shelves was waiting. He nodded at the book, prompting the younger doctor to turn it over and read the title. He couldn't believe what he saw. There on the front of the book was his name, Herman Wright. Dr. Wright looked at his colleague in confusion, and Dr. Henricks motioned for him to take a look. It was written in a language that he had never seen before, but was somehow instantly recognizable and understandable. And the book really was about him. Every detail of his life had been written down in this volume, starting with his birth, containing details that no one but he knew. His whole life story was here. From his childhood...
Make the most of every moment this Easter. Big W. Every day's a big day.
history. Dr. Henricks passed Dr. Wright another book. It was simply titled The Hunter, and it chronicled the life of a prehistoric man who spent his days searching for wild game. He lived 23 violent, monotonous years before his story ended abruptly when the saber-toothed tiger decided it was interested in the same mammoth he was hunting. This must have been one of the oldest books in the library. A book for every person on Earth. Dr. Wright could only imagine what the scale of this massive library must be. Dr. Henricks explained that mapping the library was a huge challenge, before producing a map from his pocket and laying it out on the desk. You're at base camp. This is where new births generate on the shelves, along with books pertaining to the first humans. If you want to track down specific books, you'll need to know where you're going. We've established base camps around the library to mark significant eras in human history with notable books. At each camp, you'll find generators, supplies, and beacons to light you away. If you're going back far enough, you could be traveling for days or even weeks. Dr. Wright was fascinated by this bizarre location, containing the sum total of human experience within its massively expanding walls. But there was one thing he couldn't figure out. Just why was this seemingly harmless location featuring constantly changing books the most securely guarded SCP he had ever encountered? Dr. Henricks knew he was referring to the extensive rules he must have seen as he entered. The other doctor reached into his pocket and said, "Let's just say that around here, the pen is mightier than the sword." He pressed the pen into Dr. Wright's hand and flipped open the back page of his book. It was blank. The rest of his story waiting to be written. What's something you've always wanted in your life, Dr. Wright? Think literally. Why not put it in your book or remove something you've always wanted gone? Slowly, Dr. Wright thought back to his team. You're here to test the limit of this power and see what this library can do for the Foundation. Dr. Henricks soon provided Dr. Wright with footage of some of the many tests conducted in the library, and what Dr. Wright saw amazed him. The books could rewrite the laws of nature with alarming speed, as some unfortunate D-Class personnel found out. D-0546 was brought into a room with a full head of hair. The D-Class personnel was instructed to scribble "lost all hair" into his book, and he soon started scratching his head as he rapidly started shedding hair. After less than 2 minutes, the man was completely bald. D-0567, a young woman who had been brutally injured when attacked by an escaping SCP, was bedridden and would never walk again, according to all the Foundation doctors. As the D-Class personnel used a pen to scribble over the line in her book describing her injury, Dr. Wright watched as she suffered a minor nosebleed, and then sat up, getting out of bed as if she had never been injured, and no longer remembered being attacked. Dr. Claire Williams, a Foundation researcher sick with cancer, wrote into the book about curing her symptoms, and then addressed the camera explaining that this was her third time altering her own book. Her lymphoma symptoms had returned after several months and 2 years, respectively, but it seemed that as long as she continued to make changes to her book, then she could keep the cancer at bay indefinitely. But not all the tests ended with positive results, as Dr. Wright moved on to another selection of tapes labeled Mortality tests. A D-class personnel who was given a fatal dose of drugs and then had their death erased from their book 45 minutes later miraculously returned to life, but showed significant cognitive deficits after. Another D-class, an older woman killed in a containment breach, had her death erased from the book, but came back deeply disturbed. She survived 15 days in containment, repeating, "Send me back, let me go," over and over again before committing suicide. A D-class personnel killed 28 days prior was brought back by writing "returned back to life" in their book, but died again just 13 minutes later from a cerebral hemorrhage. But it was the next tape that was the most disturbing. It documented a new book that was written by the Foundation, depicting the life of a fictional man down to the slightest detail. It was carefully placed in the correct position in the archives, resembling all the other books. And Dr. Wright watched the tape in amazement as the man resembling the fictional character created for the book spontaneously generated an SCP-4001. Almost immediately, the man started vomiting blood and died less than 2 minutes later. The book carefully described all the things he died from, and stated that this was exactly as it was supposed to be. The fake book then disappeared into the archives, never to be seen again. The archive knew when it was being used to play with life and death, and it didn't want any part of it. The next tape wasn't a test at all. It was a video interview showing a Greek-speaking scientist speaking with an ancient-looking old man, found living in the archives slowly after its discovery by the Foundation. The man, who described himself as the Watcher of Alexandria Eternal, believed he was keeping the archives safe from the Roman Empire and the other invaders. He was unaware that thousands of years had passed since his watch began. He had been using the books to write himself another day of life, and to cure his ills ever since he began guarding the library. At the conclusion of the interview, he asked to leave, and this request was granted by the Foundation. The ancient man died of old age shortly after setting foot out of the library. While the library can't technically cure death, it does seem to have nearly limitless ability to prolong life, as long as someone is willing to stay close by and never forgets to write themselves another day. Where did this incredible power come from? An O5 authorized investigation into the origins of SCP-4001 revealed that under the archive's carpet is a concrete floor covered by a layer of ash. The ash was carbon dated to between 70 and 80,000 years old. And further analysis revealed the ash is likely to be the remains of burnt wood and paper, despite there being no known records within the archive itself about a major fire having occurred there. Dr. Wright didn't have much time to dwell on the library's great power of life, because he was suddenly shaken from his thoughts by the sound of alarms. Was the library being breached? No, it was Foundation officials, led by a man recognized as Dr. Lincoln Abrams, the very man who assigned him to this project. And he did not look happy. He explained that he knew what Dr. Waylon Henricks had been up to, writing in books, changing the lives of subordinates in an attempt to play God. He knew about everything, of course, because he had read Dr. Henricks' own book. He knew all of the Doctor's secrets. He knew everything.
No, I'm so close, Dr. Abrams. I know I can crack the archive's rules. There's a way to conquer death here. I can feel it.
Dr. Abrams was done listening, and with a wave of his hand, Foundation security took Dr. Henricks into custody for a debriefing and likely demotion. Dr. Abrams then turned his attention to the new young researcher. Dr. Wright, eventful first day, I gather. I'll appoint a new lead scientist shortly, but until then, don't disrupt anything. Remember, the archive is writing our stories as we speak. It's not very happy with Dr. Henricks. Make sure your story turns out better. And with that, Dr. Abrams and his security team departed, leaving Dr. Herman Wright alone with the endless archives of Alexandria Eternal, wondering what would be written in his own tome, as the sound of new books popping into existence filled the air with ominous rustling. For more strange locations that defy the laws of nature, check out SCP-3008, Trapped in IKEA, or check out this video instead.
What else did I watch?
I looked at my stepmother, Anne, with an expression that can only be described as resignation. I love her, and the only reason she was still stepmom to me was because she was very insistent on the matter. "You already have a mother. I'm the backup," she would cheerily exclaim while giving me a cookie. "But I'm 24 now, and with COVID still going on and losing my job, well, I can't afford rent right now. So I had to move back in with my parents. It's not like it's a huge sacrifice or anything, but I've been living with my roommates for a while now, and the sudden change in scenery and losing my job and everything still going wrong is just... Anyway, I set down my luggage and gave Anne a big hug. "Jacob," she let go and gave me a warm smile. "Come on, we've got your room ready for you." I smiled back at her and repressed my sigh. I didn't want to intrude on their life, but I literally had nowhere else to go. I stepped in and began my life here. Again. Jobless and technically homeless. Again. The first week was fine. I volunteered here and there and helped my dad clean up the garage, and stepmom got to experience budget cooking for a bit. The second week, not so much. It wasn't anything bad, but Anne started doing things around the house, and as a child, it was easy to ignore. As an adult, who speaks angry Russian to her gal pals? Being a degenerate, I know curse words when I hear them, foreign or not. And there was the way she moved. Sometimes she'd just be a housewife, and sometimes there'd be this elegant princess air about her. I thought I was just being paranoid. And then the third week hit, and I found her stash of money. Good Lord, there was a lot of it. Honestly, speaking Russian and having all this cash, Anne was just a badass at that point. Then the new month hit, and I found a journal detailing her life from a child to adult. I'm not gonna lie, I read it. I really wanted to know more about my apparently badass stepmother, and at that point, it just didn't occur to me to ask. I know it's a bit of a scummy move to read a person's personal journal, especially without their permission, but am I ever glad I did? Anne is a mafia boss. Dawn, whatever. Also, she was a mafia boss. She's out of the game now. Just wanted to be a normal housewife, I guess. What the hell? That is awesome. And very unbelievable. So I chuckled and went to show Anne. "Hey, I got nosy and read a bit of your old journal. Mafia boss? Or is it Dawn?" I expected a scolding at that point. Maybe a roll of her eyes or something. Or maybe the fine middle ground of, "Oh, I was young and overly imaginative." I didn't expect for her to frown at me. "Don't tell your father, and I'll give you $5,000 than normal. Not to me, or even directed at me. Just in my presence." And then came the weird stuff. Well, weird as in, she stopped being a loving and caring stepmom, and became a loving and caring mamushka. It was awesome. Like having a babushka, only a little better. I thought she'd at least be a little bitter or jaded about having to give me $5,000 every month, but apparently it was worth it to her. Not even for keeping it a secret, just to vent about her life. The things I learned, I'd carry to my grave. Well, she asked me to keep it a secret, and right now, I can't afford not to keep it a secret. But it was a really good bonding experience for the both of us. She'd make some tea and teach me some of her ways. How she had to act as a mafia princess, and how she literally grew up into the role to take over after her dad, which she insisted I call him Gramps. Even after I learned he was one of the most feared men in all of Russia during his reign. Which, of course I would. Why wouldn't I? Most people dream about this, but I actually get to live it. This was the best. Anne still insisted I call her stepmom, though. I
Apparently she had a very strong view of parents because of the way she was raised. Gramps and Babushka were a power couple and very much in love. Women would try to get to Gramps and Grandma would just straight up shank them. I had the best family ever. The next month she gave me another $5,000, and I tried to tell her I didn't need it. She didn't have to do it. As long as their relationship was okay, it was fine with me. Anne raised an eyebrow at me and crossed her arms as suddenly she was the Mafia Don. I had to try really hard not to shrink inside myself and hold her gaze, remembering her tales of people who would earn her family's respect. It was frightening, to say the least, but apparently I held on long enough because Anne smiled at me and pinched my cheeks. I never got the chance to spoil you like I wanted when you were growing up, and the money is just sitting in my account. Well, I wasn't going to turn down free money, especially in this economy. She still insisted we keep it a secret from Dad, though, that he didn't marry her for her money or her connections to the Russian mafia, but because of her, and it was a really romantic story. These were, of course, in between her lessons on how to be a Mafia Don. Not that there were lessons on that, but the tales of her life growing up led to some interesting life lessons that I tried to commit to memory. Time had a tendency to move differently under quarantine, though. I mean, I knew it was passing, and I was still helping out around the house with Dad and Mamushka, but they just sort of flew by. I didn't notice that the year had passed me by until I looked at the calendar. "Oh, damn," I whispered so no one could hear me. I ran back to my room and checked my emails. Messages, call history, everything. No rejections for jobs, but no acceptance either. Not in the area, not near my old place, nowhere were they hiring. And I was still living at home. I didn't want to use Anne's hush money to rely on, especially if I moved, I probably wouldn't get it anymore. It long since stopped being about keeping her secret. It was just a thing we shared between us. But I was jobless and technically homeless since I wasn't paying rent. I sighed and flopped into my bed, my fancy $1,000 bed that I bought with the allowance Mamushka gave me. And then it struck me, inspiration. Nepotism was a thing, and I knew that Anne still kept in touch with her old buddies. I walked down and made sure Dad had left before approaching the kitchen, where I knew she was making beef stroganoff. Deliciousness aside, I had to talk to her. I cleared my throat. "Hey, Anne, got a second?" "Of course." She turned to face me with a smile because Anne was always smiling, until she saw my nervous stance. Then, she was Mafia Mom. "Stand up straight," she ordered. So I took a deep breath and straightened up. "I can't find a job. No one is hiring right now. And I've been here for about a year now. I love being here, don't get me wrong, but I feel like a parasite. And I want to take care of myself more, you know?" Anne raised an eyebrow at me. "And how do you propose that I solve this problem? Can I join the Mafia?" I said it clearly, but still rushed it. "Niet," she growled at me. I was intimidated, yes. She'd growled at me before, but it didn't. "But Mom," Anne tisked. "It wouldn't be easy. They like to tell stories of the good old days. They'll try and get you to do things you might not want to do. Honestly, Mamushka, as long as those things aren't drugs or prostitution, I wouldn't mind." I smiled at her. Anne locked gazes with me for a moment, but I wasn't going to back down. In the end, she was the one to break away first, and I tried very hard not to smile at my victory. "Fine, I'll make some calls, but if they try to make you do anything you aren't comfortable with, you call me immediately." I smiled and hugged her. And that is the story of how I joined the Mafia run by my stepmother.
Click, clack, click. Sound of my mouse and keyboard going off in my room. Bags and candy wrappers on the floor and on my desk. "Guys, get on the point! Stop chasing and capture objective A!" I yelled at my teammates. I can't believe this was how I used to live. My daily routine consisted of waking up, playing video games, eating snacks, and sleeping. just so I can repeat the whole thing the very next day. I didn't see a problem with my way of life. I was happy with how I did things. Or so I thought. Marcus! 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 My mom yelled at me from downstairs. I had my gaming headset on and was too focused on the game to answer back. That's when she kicked down the door to my room. Marcus! I've been calling you to go eat dinner for the last hour! Mom! Upset with my behavior. I didn't want her to get more mad, so I just went downstairs for dinner. Hey! This food's cold!
Can I have you for a second?
Maybe you should have eaten it once
We
I
need to
served it instead of
experiment with
playing
you
games.
with a new SCP that
Just
just
as I was about to
arrived.
put my food into my microwave, my dog sparked.
Sure, Iris. Thanks. Okay, follow me. Okay, cool. This way. Okay. Let's head wherever the SCP is. The SCP should be down here. Here we are. Huh? Good luck. Die. Fuck's sake. I'm gonna kill that fucking thing. Oh well.
Pile of dirty laundry. Speaking of dirty laundry, that was the next thing we worked on. I remember doing laundry like once or twice. Most of the time my mom would do it for me. Well, today was going to be the day I learned. Aunt Isabel, where are the washer and dryer? I asked. She only gave a funny look and took me outside by the well. Why would they have their washers and dryers on the outside of the mansion, I wonder? Then I remembered that they did not have electricity out here. Which meant... That's right. I had to wash my clothes by hand and hang them on the line to let them dry. We were only halfway through the day and I was already exhausted. There was so much left to be done. Next up was